Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to make a farm for a whole bunch of different items using these. So let's get to it. So this video is going to be on this Hero the Village farm. And what that is, if you're not aware, is villagers giving us gifts. Now, back when Cycraft was doing their Blitz, Methodzz had designed a Hero of the Village farm, and that inspired me to do a slightly different version of it over on the Syndicate server. But at this point now, I got reinvigorated on it because Cy has actually now decided that they're going to do all their redstone farming without using raid farms now that they're updated to 119. And since witch huts took a huge nosedive because the doubling of the world height in 118, that means that kind of a lot of people in 118 and now 119 just turned to raid farms to get their redstone. I personally don't like raid farms. I think they're very overpowered. I think they need a big nerf. And there are actually a lot of servers that don't like you using them either, especially some of the really good ones, because they need to use a carpet bot, and you may not have a carpet server or that type of thing. So we're going to do this without using any raid farm or anything, but you can get more than just redstone out of this. Here's a representation of the items that we can get as drops out of this farm. And what you're going to do ahead of time is kind of decide what you want to do. So you can build up this a couple of times, but you don't have to require any stacking raid mechanics. And then we can get all these different types of things. So depending on what the villager profession that we put in the farm will throw, we can get redstone. We can get, a lot of unfarmables like chainmail. You can't even make chainmail. The tipped arrows, so you get random tipped arrows. You can farm pumpkin pie and cookies, the different cooked meats, all 16 colors of wool. You got maps, and maybe if you're doing a bunch of map art on your server, you want to do a map farm. I guess why, but you could do it. Back before 119, you couldn't farm clay any other way other than a Hero of the Village farm. So you can still do that now, but you could also just set up an AFK farm for it here. But our key piece here being redstone dust. So obviously in this channel, we love our redstone, and so we need a lot of redstone dust. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get a bunch of those villagers in these cells here. So you can either run this with a bot or a player that just has a clicker for attacking. And then we'll go through all these components in a bit. A lot of these are inspired or directly from Psy members, so I'll go over that when we get there. But here, in this case, we have 350 clerics, all just throwing redstone and lapis, which is giving us a nice supply. So let's go over how this works. Before I get into that, as always, there's going to be a world download down in the video description where you can download this world for yourself, grab your schematics, mess around with it, test it out for yourself, see if there's any changes you want to make. But just note, the version that's going to be in the world download is going to be loaded up with the 350 clerics here. And right over here, so if you turn this way, there is a version here that's going to show how you're going to build this when you want to set this up, if you want to load this up with your own villagers in survival. And we'll go over that in just a bit. But then also in the world download is this right here. So these are different command blocks that are set to summon villagers with a profession in each of those cells. So each of these command blocks goes to those cells, and I've got that saved. So if you wanted to test it with a different profession inside there, you can just change right here where it says cleric. Let's say butcher. And then because we want to summon so many of these, I've just got this set up. There's an auto dropper here, and however many items you put in this dropper, it will summon that many villagers in each of the 7 cells. So again, this is just for your creative testing to summon your own villagers, but let's say I want to summon 350 villagers, so that's the 7 cells times 50. This cell has been changed over to the butchers because we changed that command block. Okay, so what do we have here? So down here at ground level, we have a pillager outpost. And all we've done is we've built a couple of spawning platforms on top of it. And these spawning platforms are going to allow for pillagers to spawn when we want them to. And then what we're going to do is on each platform, we have this villager here. And they're going to be attracted to that villager. So wherever they spawn on this platform, they're going to be attracted to that villager. You'll notice currently these lamps are on, meaning that everything is lit up in here. and everything is lit up enough so that pillagers won't spawn, because they have special spawning rules. They can spawn on grass and sand, and I think dirt too, in any light level inside that area, but on other blocks they require a heightened light level. So we have this, stop them from spawning, because right now it's actually running, so we don't want to get any raiders. They're going to want to walk as close to him as they can. They're going to end up going in this water stream. We have water flowing out to the side just a little bit to make sure they get pulled into the water stream, and then they get sent all the way up where they get dropped in front of the player or the bot. I'm just spawning them into the water stream right now so we can see this is turned off where he can kill them until one comes along with a banner, which will actually then spawn his raid. What happens is that soul sand that he died on, we actually have a filter underneath that's only going to take in those ominous banners when they drop, and then we can use that to get our signal out of. So when this filter then kicks off, we get a signal and start our clock. Our clock over here is 40 minutes because here the village lasts for 40 minutes. This is actually not really a clock, but a pulse extender, a really long pulse extender designed by Ilmango. And we can set this based on how many items are in this hopper right here. And we're using that to set this to be a 40-minute clock. Right now, it's not operational because we pull this block out so it can actually turn off. So we do have a couple of things preventing us from accidentally turning on if we don't want to. And then also when that happens, that's when we turn on those lamps down there. And then we're actually going to use these water streams to send the player back and forth. When a player or a bot has that Hero of the Village status effect, then any villagers within 5 blocks of them will then throw gifts at them based on their profession, which we talked about earlier. And so those gifts are going to pop out of the villager. As we saw before, they're going to drop into this water stream and go down over here to our collection. Now, right now, like I said, this is turned off. Here's your on-off switch, this lever on the redstone lamp. So we have it so that this would turn off. If this was in the middle of running, then it would turn off. So if we wanted to turn it off and go do other stuff on the server, come back later, we don't have to wait for that to tick all the way down to its 40-minute thing to start getting pillagers again. But then we also have this extender because after we get those pillagers, we want to make sure that we have time to clear them out. So I'm just going to summon in 1 villager per cell just so we can get a little better frames per second while we're doing this. And I'm going to flick this lever to turn on the farm. So I'm now in free cam so we can see what's going to happen. I'm going to flick that lever. It's going to pull away that redstone block. Those lamps are going to turn off. And now we're going to be able to have pillagers spawning on these platforms. You can see there, he's running straight towards that villager. We do have them step on top of a magma block real quick just to give them a little bit of damage because a mob's despawn timer resets if they take damage. By the time they get up here, they're within the player's can't despawn range and we don't have to worry about despawning anymore. And here comes our banner guy. Now, let's bear with me because things are about to happen real fast here. So, banner fell into the item filter and then ticked off the clock. We can see now here this signal is at 15. So it's going to take 40 minutes for that signal to degrade down to 0. This trapdoor is now open and sent a signal down to those observers down there to then turn back on those lamps. And now here we have all of our pillagers came up and we have our raid starting. Now we can see we have our raid starting, but we actually have no raiders. But you can see down there they spawned briefly and then despawned. Because what's happening, and now we can have our raid victory, is we are so high up in the world that any place that those raiders are going to spawn out there is outside of our spawning sphere. So the wave spawns and then despawns instantly. The next wave spawns, despawns instantly. Let's say the next wave spawns over here, despawns instantly. Even if it despawns like right over there, it then despawns instantly. So we just have to make sure that we're building this with non-spawnable stuff. And just know, right now, I've done glass here, but if you do this in a snowy biome where you're going to get snow landing on top of this glass, for some reason, a snow layer on top of glass makes it spawnable for a raid. So make sure that then you're covering things with, buttons or slabs, something that can't have snow on it if you are doing this in a snowy biome. So we can see as an example here, I just have a villager. This is just a cylinder of all glass underneath, you can see. And then just snow layers on top. So I'm going to give myself bad omen, and we're going to see the raid bar go up. And we're going to see they can actually spawn on that snow layer. There's the next wave spawning on snow layers, and another wave. But if we cover up all of that glass with something that can't produce any snow, then we can't have any raiders spawning up on that area. Now we waited for this pulse extender to die out before we actually started sending the player back and forth because we want to make sure as those other pillagers come back up, even though we send an instant signal down, they probably still already spawned or already started going up that water column. as they get up here, they're going to join the raid. And so you can't get those waves spawning until they're all dead. And so we just drop them in from the player, and we don't move the player back and forth until he's had a chance to kill those guys. So this has just been timed out, so there's enough time for one of the pillagers to spawn on the edge of the platform and then run into the villager, come up the water column, and die in front of the player. But now the player is being pushed back and forth. We're not seeing that many gifts dropped here because, again, we only have the 7 in here just as I display this. But each time one of the villagers drops a gift, they're then going to reset their timer to when they can give out another gift. And unfortunately, that's wildly... Oh, we just saw one right there. Unfortunately, that's wildly varied because they'll drop between every 30 seconds to 5 minutes and 30 seconds. So it can be a really long clock, and that's why we don't have just a few guys in here. Oh, thank you. We have a bunch of guys in here. And we can see when we have our full set of villagers in there, we get a significant increase in drops. Then what's going to happen as this signal degrades and gets down to 0, these clocks are going to stop where the player is getting sent back and forth. So it's going to get dropped right in front of there again. And then the signal is going to get sent back down to turn the lamps back off so we can have pillagers or raiders or whatever you call them spawning under there and being sent back up so we can do this cycle all over again. Just note too, in this case, this is not exactly a spawning skirt. I mean, it is probably helping with some pack spawning, but what this is for light level. So with these lights off, we need that skylight level controlled. So you can see right here, the light blue ones, I have that skylight level there in the block. And a pillager can only spawn on that block if the skylight is 11 or lower. So this skirt is probably actually a little bit bigger than it needs to be. We can see here the biggest light blue value we have on that light overlay is 9s. We just need that to be 11 or lower. And then it will start kicking off the whole process again. And once again, if we flick this lever to turn it off, it's going to go ahead and pull that block out, so it's going to reset this. You can also set off this so that our lamps turn back on down there, and then we can turn it back on again later. I think I've got enough spam protections in here, but there's probably some specific timing combination that you could do something funky. It's not really going to break anything, but you actually want to wait for this to tick back over before you turn the farm back on. So I do actually have this comparator signal coming out here. Having this come over on this magenta line into some safeties. So theoretically, it shouldn't be able to break this clock if you try and turn it on early. But just don't. Just don't spam it. As far as the rates, so this is, once again, this is 7 cells with 50 villagers each, and each cell is dropping approximately 850 per hour. So this specific design right here, as the villagers sit, is going to produce about 6,000 items per hour. Unfortunately, as far as redstone goes, that's only going to be about 3,000 per hour because clerics will drop 50-50 between lapis and redstone. But if you want to do this for a redstone farm and you didn't care about the lapis, all you could do is just change this over from raw chest to an item filter. But I didn't do any item filters in this case because we also have things that are doing unstackables. So, if you wanted to farm that chainmail, you can't stack that in item filter. Or if you want to do just a giant variety of villagers and get a whole bunch of random drops from this, then you'd have to set up an item filter for each one. Like, for example, the wool, you'd have to set up an item filter for all 16 colors of wool. So 16 item filters. And then another 16 for the tipped arrows. So maybe at that point, you just kind of extend this normal storage. I don't really like to leave unfiltered item collection in a farm, but in this case, with how much random stuff we're going to be getting, I figured it's probably best. And the player can decide if you want to do just a filter because you want to do just redstone or something else. So that's the rates. Now let's talk about how you're going to actually get this set up. Because as I mentioned earlier in the video, the farm doesn't come like this. You have to load these guys up and then build around them. First thing to note, you're going to want a regen beacon. So you want to have regen on the player or the bot that's standing there doing the swiping, because after long enough of them swiping with their sword, they're going to start taking starvation. You want to make sure they have regen so they don't die. And then I did do some color coding here. So everything in gray, yellow, magenta, blue, orange, and black you need to keep. That's actually for running the farm. But over here in the purple and the lime, this is all just part of the setup process, as well as this breeder over here. So this is a pretty standard villager breeder. All it is, farmers inside of a farm here, and we have just carrots. So the farmers are farming up the carrots and picking them up in their inventory, and then they go to breed with them. Since they're producing their own food, it's basically automatic. Right now, I have this lever flipped, so this is blocked off, so they can't reach the beds. But what happens is you want to have 2 beds for each villager in there. So in this case, we have 6 villagers in there to do our breeding with. They don't all need to be farmers. They'll throw food to each other. It just makes it kind of easier if they're farmers, and that composter is just super cheap. So we have 12 beds here, 2 for each villager. And if I open this back up, they're going to pathfind to the beds, but because of the trapdoors, I won't actually be able to reach them. And then the babies will want to head out, and they want to go jump on those beds. But they'll fall down. And then they get pushed on this water stream into Methodzz baby villager sorter. So I'll include a link down in the video description. Methodzz designed this so that all your villager babies stay down in this cell right here, and then all your adults get filtered out over into this cell. Now, this does mean with this breeder, you're only looking at 12 babies per day. You're still looking at 30 Minecraft days under ideal breeding conditions to actually fill this up with 350 villagers. So you can absolutely use other breeding designs where you just have a row of villagers and you're just throwing food at them manually or out of droppers. And that's how they're getting their food rather than waiting to grow it themselves. There's nothing wrong with that option. You can dump them into this same kind of system here. But I have opted to go for this method just to make it kind of nice and AFK. And so you as the player, if you're doing this, you could just pick a spot over here and stand there. Go grab yourself a bite to eat. Go grab a nap, take a shower or something like that. Maybe clean your keyboard. You know your keyboard's gross. Just look in between your keyboard keys right now. Turn it upside down and shake it and just, oh my God. But other villager breeders will work fine on here as well. Then we want to actually get them in the cell using this lime system. And what we have here is we have these mine carts on a circular path, so we don't have to worry about additional mine carts or anything. We send a villager into there, and then we eject them out of the mine cart. But to show how you're going to load them up, we're going to go over to this version right over here, and this is set up for them to preload. We can see here each of these cells has the ladders in it so that we can stop them from entity cramming. That's also going to stop the water from flowing back on our slabs once we get to that point. But that means we can put more than 25 villagers inside each of these cells. And we have these trapdoors open so that the villagers will eject into there. And what we need to do in order for them to maintain a profession inside of there, instead of placing down 350 workstations, we are going to trade once with them, and then we're going to break their workstation and put them in the cell and then replace down the workstation for the next villager. And that way they will keep their profession, but they won't be able to get their way back to the workstation. I'm going to just manually send a minecart through to show how this is going to work, but we're going to grab a villager out of there using that minecart, and then he's going to be able to come over to this workstation and claim it. Now he's claimed the workstation. We just want to do one trade with him. So if we were doing things like masons, probably the easiest one is going to be just buying some bricks. He's now done one trade, so even when we break that workstation like that, he's still going to keep his job. Next, I'm going to push this button, and what that's going to do is open this fence gate and send a signal at the back, and that's going to cycle our minecart, so it's going to then send this minecart up this way, this minecart over here, and then there will be a minecart here that gets sent over to give us new villager. So we can see how that system would look over here. And then here on this version, I have also included just a dropper that faces into a chest. This does nothing more than helps us keep count of how many villagers we've done, because once you start getting in there, getting your exact count of your entities can get kind of difficult. And so each time we press that button, it's just going to shoot an item into this chest, and we can use that to count. So we could let it get up to 50, and then we know, okay, this cell's done. I'm going to put that down there to show my first cell's done. Then I'll start filling the next slot to 50. This is just to help us count. But it's going to come up here. It's going to go onto the activator rail and shoot him into that cell. Note that activator rails are directional, so if you're building this in another direction, you may want to actually go ahead and cover this floor up right here. And then we replace the workstation, and that would then have called our next villager, and he can now claim this workstation. One thing to note is you will see there's a sticky piston underneath here, and that's because certain workstations we can actually break by pushing them with a sticky piston. So any of the workstations that don't actually have NBT data to them, like the furnaces or blast furnaces, they can get pushed. So this is the set of workstations right here that can get pushed by a piston. We can see if I put a block next to there and hit a button, we can push that. And what that's doing is it's basically recreating the block. The villager considers it as their workstation has been broken. Unfortunately, these workstations cannot be pushed. So if I want to do this with clerics, unfortunately, it's for the redstone that we want. That means each time you will have to manually break and replace the workstation. But for these types of workstations right here, this will automatically take care of the workstation for us. If we look at that sticky piston, and now the next villager comes in, boom. So what we do then is we'd get our 50 villagers inside of here. And remember, we have to trade with them once each time. And then we would come in and we just need to move our activator rail over to the next cell, cover this back up, and then we start sending in the next batch. And we can see these guys in these cells here, they still have their mason robes. So they still have their job, even though they don't have a workstation. Okay, now let's say you did all of your trading. You've got your villagers all filled up in your cells. There's 350 of them. There's definitely not just 10 in here. Now we need to get this prepped up. So first of all, we don't need any more villagers in here. We can kill those. And then you can just hit that lever to close off that villager breeder again. First thing we can do, we can take out these safety blocks again, which you didn't need if this was built in the same direction. Then we need to take out these rails. So we take off all the rails now. We can fill in this hole because we don't need to send the minecart anymore. And then once again, same thing on this side. We can fill this hole. Now, what we need to do is we need to get those trapdoors closed so that these villagers will be stuck inside that trapdoor. So if we have a villager summoned inside a trapdoor, but there's nothing from stopping him from getting out of that block, he can just walk right out of it. But if we have blocks blocking him on all sides, he can no longer walk out of that block. So we're going to use pistons to move a bunch of stuff to make sure that we don't accidentally screw anything up. If you do and some villagers bleed over, it's not the end of the world. It just means there's going to be some extra villagers on one side and not on the other. But let's just do this just to make sure it's nothing to worry about. So then next thing we're going to do is we're going to move these down. And since we're placing them right next to the redstone blocks, as soon as we place the piston, it's already going to push down. Okay, we can then break those pistons. And then we're going to come in from behind and we're going to do another set of pistons. Let's just build some solid blocks back there, facing this way again, and then we'll put the pistons facing in towards those villagers. And what we're going to do is we're going to push all those glass blocks over so that they're still above the villager's head. And once we push the redstone blocks out of the way, all those trapdoors are going to close all at the same time. So redstone down, button on back, and I'm going to go into free cam. Boom. Now we can break out this extra row of blocks on top. We can break out those redstone blocks. We can break out these pistons. We now got our villagers trapped in our cells, and all we need to do is then just waterlog our slabs. That ensures that no matter where they toss their item, it's going to land out on here in water and get pushed down into our waterway. And because we have those ladders back there, those ladders actually stop the water, so we don't have to worry about the water flowing back into the villagers. And now you're ready to go. So once again, I know this is uploaded to my channel. The world download is going to have my name on it. Keep in mind, this is heavily inspired by what Psycraft did in the Psy Blitz, and then re-inspired by what they did in their resurgence into 119. You should check out what they're up to, because they have actually done a much, much bigger version of this, which I'm not going to cover in this video for two reasons. One, I'm not exactly sure what all they did because I'm not on Psy. And the other reason being is because most servers, this is going to be more than you need. I mean, 3,000 redstone per hour is even better than a single witch hut used to be back in 117. I mean, heck, it's not much less than a quad witch hut used to be. So all those questions we see about, oh, what about a quad witch hut seed for 119? Well, don't worry anymore. Just here at the village farm. So that's going to be it for this video. Once again, look down the video description where you can get a link to the world download that you can come grab a schematic of this for yourself. Also down the video description will be links to Mango and Methodzz, where some of these were just straight up circuits designed completely by them, but a lot of this was completely inspired by the work that they're doing. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll catch you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.